Okay, so I'm excited to say that Blanca is joining me today on Premier Gospel. Hi, Blanca, how are you?
I'm doing great. So happy to be here with you guys.
Amazing. So I want to start the interview off by giving a shout out to your son because his name is London. Uh,
He's amazing, just like the city. He actually was named after the city. So I was going to go on my first trip to London, and we had everything booked, and I found out I was pregnant. And so I got so sick that I told myself, I said, he'll have to be my London because I can't go on this trip. We had to cancel it all.
oh my
And
God.
the name stuck.
Wow. Have you ever been to the UK?
I've been one time since
Okay.
that experience. He has not, and he really wants to go. But I had a layover um, in London. I believe I was heading maybe to the Netherlands or somewhere in that vicinity. And so we stopped in London for 24 hours, and I got to explore the city for the day.
Wow. Oh, okay. So when you come back here, you have to come to Premier Gospel, and we'll show you like all the best of London with London.
Done, done, done.
So your new album is titled The Heartbreak and the Healing. And could you just tell us a little bit more about the album, about the creative process?
So this album came out of a journey that I went on with going through a divorce. And so as a Christian female artist, that's something one that is really, really scary and that you never think to yourself that you would end up having to go through. And so as I started this journey, I just knew that my next album, whatever it was going to be, would have to be from an honest, vulnerable place of what I've experienced. And so I called it the heartbreak and the healing because I feel like that's exactly the journey that I've been on over the last few years. And it's kind of this juxtaposition of like going through pain and heartache, but also seeing growth and beauty and healing within that place. And so I'm like, what should I do? Like, do I make the album two-sided? Like it's like part A and part B. But I was like, no, I just want to kind of like make a track list that it expresses everything that I kind of walk through in this journey, from songs about heartbreak and about being in the middle of that pain to also the restoration process that God brought me through.
So that kind of leads me to my next question, which is a two-part question. So I want to start with the heartbreak. Could you just talk a little bit more? Obviously, you mentioned that you got divorced and you were navigating a new way of life. We were in a pandemic. So how did you just kind of navigate that season of life?
It was really hard. Like I said, it wasn't anything that was expected, and it came through a lot of pain. And so I think the biggest thing for me, especially having my son is now 9 years old, but at the time, he was a little younger than that. And he was my main focus, my main strength. Like I just kept asking the Lord, like, I know that I may not have it in me to go through this right now, but for the sake of my son, like, please help me see clearly and have direction on how to handle this in the best way that's going to give the less amount of impact to him, right? Which is inevitable that something will impact him, but I just wanted to walk in love and grace and with God's guidance. And so that's where it all began. I started doing therapy um, to help me have the tools to cope and to um, kind of walk through this journey. And then through music, music is healing for me. I really feel like this album is like a journal entry, like journal entries over the last 2 years of what I've walked through. And so when I listen back, sometimes it takes me back to that place, but other times I'm reminded of God's faithfulness and just like how I was able to get through a time that I thought I wasn't going to be able to get through something.
Yeah, you can really see that. And I think so much of music is that it hits everyone differently. Like a sermon, everyone will hear a word, but there'll be just like a God word for each person. I think it's the same
Yeah.
with music. So it's kind of like it translates to kind of all experiences and stuff like that. And you can really see that and feel that through the album. So the other side of that is the healing. So um, you found healing on the other side of hardship. what did healing look like for you?
Healing looked like growth. Healing looked like self-awareness and finding my voice. Healing looked like a friendship, a hand from my community, and it just came in all sorts of forms. And yeah, I think it's more of like an understanding that pain is sometimes inevitable in life, and we all are going to experience it and go through it, but that he uses it all. Like God uses, like I have a song on the album called Something Better, and I feel like it's like an anthem for me because it's like there's not a tear that you let go to waste. There's nothing that I've cried out that hasn't been used in some form by him in my story. And so that's been the biggest way that healing has shown up for me.
Wow. So on like you were saying about how it's kind of like God doesn't waste any single thing. Um, how did that combined experience of the heartbreak and the healing um change and mature your faith and then also deepen your relationship with God?
Oh, I love that question because I think it plays a major role. It's like about, and I touched this on my last album. I touched on like real love and not doing things based on outward appearances or just like trying to put God in a box. But when you really go through trials, you understand more of who he is. It's like how even at your worst place, like what you feel is the ugliest part of you, like he still loves and uses and meets you there. Like it gives him a whole new characteristic, a whole new kind of understanding of how he works. And so that's been the biggest way that my faith has been deepened because I'm like, you walk through a pandemic and a divorce. It's like you're not around community, you're not able to go to church, you're walking through probably one of the most devastating things in your life. How do you find God in that? And yet I did, and he met me there. And it's like expanding even what I thought was possible with my relationship with God.
Wow. So I know you just mentioned even at my worst. I feel like so many people love that song. I think it was I think I saw your interview with K-Love and Skip was like, I cried the first time I heard that song. So it brings literally even Skip to tears, a grown man.
Yeah.
But for you, what song on the album kind of like means the most? I know it's like picking a favorite child, but a song that means the most, or is your favorite, or that you love right now?
I think all of my singles, which I'm so grateful that the my label like really heard me out on what I wanted to release and the songs that I felt really connected to. But even at my worst, I remember when I wrote that song, and this was in 2020. So it's been 2 years since I wrote it, but it was just so impactful. Like I would listen to it and it would move me to tears because I felt like it just expressed exactly where I was in that time. And then when we released the healing, that was like a God moment for me because so many things fell into place, even with having Dante Bow on the song, and that was something that
Oh,
I
that
had.
story. I love that story.
I know, like I just dreamed up all these things and envisioned them in my head, and like to see that song release and the impact that it had, knowing that it was one of my favorite songs. Again, I wrote that in this very room that I'm sitting in now. I listened to an email that a producer sent me of a track, and I just on my phone I like voice memoed some of the melodies and the lyrics to the song. So it's like, oh my gosh, these are like little babies for me that I saw kind of develop and grow. And then my ultimate favorite, like if there was like a vibe song, it would be New Day. Like I wrote that song and immediately was like, this is probably one of my favorites on the album. And so it just expressed like I feel joy when I listen to that song. I feel proud of it. I feel like, man, these are just like so true to the emotions that I have felt through this process.
Yeah, and I love that there's you as you listen to the album, there's so many different sounds. Like, because you are a very versatile artist. Because some people would try and say you're CCM, some people would say you're like
Yeah.
Latin, but you are also like pop. You are also gospel. Like so many different threads. And I love the gospel sound with Jacqueline Carr on New Day. It's so
Yeah.
good. So, so good.
Thank.
So practically speaking, I just want you to like speak to our audience for a minute, to just maybe a word of encouragement or some advice to the girl who might be going through a heartbreak, the parent who's just got divorced and is navigating single parenthood for the first time, maybe the person who lost a dream job, or just someone simply going through some type of grief. Um, what could you tell them in the feeling of heartbreak and then also for healing?
Oh, I think for those of you that are going through hardship right now and find yourself just like in a really hard place, my biggest thing the first off, I would say is that you're not alone. I remember feeling so lonely and thinking no one's going to understand, no one's going to, um, just shame and loneliness became really prevalent in my life. So let me start by saying that's a lie and you're not alone. You will be surprised of how many people are experiencing so many of the similar emotions and um, things that you're experiencing right now. And then past that, I would say you are stronger than you think you are. And if you just give it time, you'll have perspective in such a bigger way than what you're seeing in this tiny view right now. Everything feels so big, everything feels so hard. Everything is like, for me, when I walked through my divorce, it just felt like my whole life was over. But as I began to walk with the Lord in this journey, He gave me a new perspective and showed me that this was just a piece of my story, not all of it, and that He was going to use it. So nothing is wasted in this time, and just give it, like, just be patient, be steadfast, and you'll see how He's going to turn it around. So it feels so cliche sometimes, but like He's going to turn around or it all works out for our good. Like no one desires to go through these things that we have to walk through, right? So it's not like, oh, it's on purpose. Like you have to go through this in order to see the bigger picture. But it's like, no, within our mess, He still uses it and He's able to. There's good, there's strength, there's perseverance. It's like I think of the scripture, count it all joy when you go through
Yeah,
trials, right? It's
James
like
1. That's one of my favorite scriptures.
I'm like, God,
Yeah,
what are you even saying? What does that even mean? Like,
honestly.
how can I find this joyful? Like, I do not feel happy. But as I get to the other side of it, I'm like, you're the little funny one. Cause it's like, yes, I grew so much through this and I learned to persevere. I learned that I had an inner strength I didn't know I can even have. So there is beauty that comes out of it.
I love that. And I think God is funny sometimes because I think so much of the time people kind of use this cliche of like, oh, it's this big, amazing God. And if you serve God, you're going to have this big, wonderful, perfect life. And like, you're going to have all the money and all the things and all of the materialism and this magical life that we want. But it's like, no, no, no. It's like, we're still going to go through hardship as Christians. But like you said, count it all joy. It's like, it's when you see the joy in the hardship, that's when you see God. And I think that's what
Mm,
seems to be what you're saying. Um,
that is so good. That's exactly it. I'm like, it's when you're able to have joy in the midst of trials that you understand
yeah, for
who
sure.
God is.
So, kind of a sidebar, but how did give maybe one example of how God showed up for you in like a hard moment?
I think the biggest thing, and not to go super deep, but I had a lot of trauma in my childhood. I dealt with sexual abuse, and it was something that I never could face. Like kind of buried it so deep for so long. But through this trial, I feel like God was like, you know what? I'm not just trying to heal you from this moment. I'm trying to go back to some agreements that you've made, even as a little girl, and we're gonna work from there and rewrite some of the things that you've kind of come to terms with in your life. And so I think that was the biggest way that God showed up for me because I didn't think it was possible. I was like, I don't know how I'm ever going to deal with this giant, like, darkness that I feel that I don't want to talk about and I don't feel like people would understand. But yet he took me through this journey not just to heal me from my divorce, but to heal me from my past as well.
Wow. Redemption story. I love
Exactly.
it. I love it. So how have you redefined love in your now? As in, not in the heartbreak, not in the healing, but as Blanca right here in this 2022, September 27th, when this is being recorded. um, so yeah, I mean, you seem to have an amazing group of friends. Your son, you're doing so well parenting him. You go to Disneyland, like I always love all the pictures. Your music's doing really well. So how have you redefined love?
It's I honestly, I feel like it's what you just talked about finding joy in all seasons of life. I've I keep saying like life to me feels like an ocean of waves. Like it just there's constant ups and downs and I think they're inevitable. Like
Mm.
I can't tell myself, "Oh, I'm going to find happiness and joy when life is calm and finally like I don't have to deal with trials." Like I don't think that's ever going to happen. There's going to be something I'm going to feel at peace and then all of a sudden something else is going to come maybe down the line that is hard. But it's like finding joy in the present moment has been how I've redefined love in such a big way. It's like I want to be here. I don't want to project my past onto this moment or project future fears onto this moment, but I just want to be with my son, the people that I love, and be joyful in what God is doing right now. Like, so that's been the biggest thing.
So good. I love this. So now moving on from the album, it's also Hispanic Heritage Month, and this show is actually the Latin selection show. So we play Christian Spanish music, and it's, I believe, the only Christian Latin music show in the UK, and I don't know, maybe one of the only ones in Europe. So
That is
I'm kind of proud
awesome.
to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. You are of Puerto Rican heritage, so could you just talk a little bit about what that means to you?
Um, well, for those of you who don't know a lot of my story, I am from Puerto Rican descent, and a few years back, I lost both of my parents. My dad uh, was the first one to pass away, and he only spoke Spanish. Like he didn't really speak English at all. Like he only spoke Spanish. And then my mom spoke great English, but they would always tell me, Blanca, like we think you should make music for your roots, your family. There's so many people out there that would be so blessed by getting to hear your songs in Spanish. And I would be so intimidated by it that I'd be like, no, 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 I'm scared. I don't want to mess it up and sound dumb singing in Spanish. But when they passed, it became my kind of new goal to keep their legacy alive and make them proud. And so now that it's Hispanic Heritage Month, it takes on a whole new meaning for me because I've gone on this journey of embracing my Latina roots. And I've done so many songs since then in Spanish and connected with a whole new audience of Latinos. And so I feel really proud of the progress and the growth that I've made, but also um, what my parents instilled in me since I was a little girl, that this is not something to be ashamed of, but to be so proud of, to be a Latina.
Amazing. And then kind of touching more on your dad, and kind of his impact, I suppose, on your life. Where he was the one who led you to the Lord, took you to church in your teens, and he was also a singer, right? And he
Yeah. Yeah.
salsa music, right?
He did
Yeah.
salsa, Christian salsa music.
So how did those kind of things kind of influence you from a young age? And
Yeah, my dad, he was very charismatic. I'm very similar to him in terms of like our passion for music and dance. And my mom was like more shy and quiet. But my dad left a huge impact on my life just because I saw his journey and his testimony of kind of his like a God moment that happened in his life where he wasn't serving the Lord and ended up giving his life to Christ and doing music full time. And I would hear his testimony at different churches and just be like, whatever God he's talking about has to be real because I see such a change in him. And so um, I even on my last EP took one of my dad's songs and remixed it, and I called it Papi song because I would call my dad Papi. And I made a Spanish remix to one of his songs. And so I feel like they're with me. Like I feel like my dad is with me even now, um, in all of these different journeys that I'm on, but especially within my Spanish music. Like they give me so much strength and perseverance to continue to make music that I know they would be proud of.
Amazing. So I also want to ask you about Renovado, right? Because that was your first kind of fully Spanish project, is that correct?
Yes.
Because all the other stuff was translation. So um, what did that project represent for you in terms of your artistry and just your journey with Spanish
Mhm.
music?
It was huge. I don't think people understand how much renovada was really, which renovada means renewed in Spanish. And that's exactly what happened. I feel like that was like, I was renewing my sound, my artistry, my music, my life. I had gone through the divorce, but nobody really knew that I was walking through it at that time. And so it was a pivotal album for me. And so I feel like when I think back at Renovada and I listen to it was the first time that I took the reins of my own career and said, this is what I believe in. This is what I feel passionate about. This is what I want it to sound like, look like, all of the above. And so normally in the past, I was always a part of the creative process, but I more took a back seat and just felt like whatever you guys want me to do, I'll do. And this was a shift. So it was definitely a pivotal album for me.
Man, do you have a favorite song from the EP?
Oh man, that's hard. I love Zone. It's probably my favorite song to do live at my live shows. And then um, I also love Amor de Primera because it's just such a vibe. So I can't pick. Those were all like that's the
It's a
amazing
very, very good EP.
part.
Like, I mean, I okay, so maybe I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this, but Un Salmo was like my most played song on Spotify last year.
Which one was?
Un Salmo.
Un Salmo was?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so
It's
cool.
so funny because, and even my mom, who doesn't understand any Spanish, like that's like our song when it comes on my playlist in the car. Like she's like turning it up. She's like, "Da-da-da-da-da-da," like just like humming along. Like she loves it. Yeah.
That makes me so
Yeah,
happy.
no, no, no. It's like honestly, that album was like I think that was kind of around the time that I really kind of found you and your sound and like I don't know, like all of last summer I was just like you can ask anyone. I was like, have you listened to Blanca? I'm like just had this revelation. I'm like, she's this amazing artist, by the way. So
Oh, that
funny.
makes me so
Yeah.
happy.
No,
That
yeah,
means a
we played the songs quite a bit on the show. So yeah.
lot. So is that like if I go on my insights and I see a peak in the UK that's
Yeah.
coming from you, your
Oh,
Spotify account.
me and all my friends, yes. I convert them all.
Oh, I love it.
So funny. So now, as you said, like kind of taking the reins of your career and being someone leading the way in like Spanish music, because I think your positioning is quite unique because not only are you doing the Spanish thing, but you're also doing the CCM thing, and you're kind of I feel like you're bridging the two because there are a lot of people, up and coming artists who are bridging the Spanish and the English sounds together. Because I know, like Chris, for instance, and you guys friends,
Yeah,
she
yeah.
told me you guys have a track coming up on her new album, so I'm just like waiting. Yeah, and just just a lot of amazing up and coming people, but you are like very mainstream as well. So how does it kind of feel to have that positioning in Christian music, in popular Christian and mainstream Christian music? And how does it feel to be able to represent both languages in that space?
That feels amazing. I feel like it's my personal goal to pave a way for artists like Chris that are, you know, alongside me, but also in a sense, newer artists that need opportunity and a space to be heard. And so I just feel like that's my personal kind of goal is to continue to pave the way, even if it's not something in Christian music that's really accepted or seen a lot, especially from a CCM point of view. I'm probably one of the only Latinas within that community, and so I feel honored. I really do. I feel honored to represent them, to represent my people, and to give Latinos a voice within this industry.
Amazing. And the last question that I have for you is about legacy, because I know it's something that's important to you, like you mentioned about your parents. So, what does legacy look like for you? And how would you like to be remembered?
I've never thought of that. Um, but I think how I would want to be remembered is as a fearless trailblazer who found her voice and stuck with it and kind of made a path for those to come. That feels like so full of purpose and how I would want to be remembered. But legacy to me is that um it's not about pressure. It's not about trying to do things because you're trying to build your own legacy, but more so because you're doing it for others. And you're understanding that the role you play is so much bigger than just you.
Wow, I love that. Um, so, thank you very much for your time. Where can we find you on social media?
You could find me at official Blanca on Instagram and Facebook. On Twitter, I'm the real Blanca, but I'm honestly not on it very often. So just go to
None of us are on Twitter.
Instagram. I try my
Yeah,
best. But and then my my site, my website is officialblanca.com.